From the towering Wasatch Mountains of the American Southwest, we welcome you to this episode of Undiscovered Utah. This show focuses on the mysteries that surround the rugged, difficult, and sometimes deadly American Southwest. I'm your host, JB, and spring break is right around the corner. So tonight we're going to be discussing spring break in Utah and how to get the most out of your vacation with the kids. We'll also talk about how to deal with spring break if you're visiting Utah from out of state and what to expect. So when is spring break and how big of a deal is it in Utah? Different school districts take spring break at different times. The same is true with the colleges and universities. But for an example, the Alpine, Salt Lake, and Provo school districts will be on spring break the same week from March 31st to April 4th. Alpine School District alone has almost 100,000 students. You add to that their families, which in Utah, families are usually big, and it gives you an idea of how many hundreds of thousands of people will be vacationing that same week. Having this many students out of school the same week can have and does have a huge impact on popular vacation spots in Utah and the surrounding states, including places like Disneyland in Southern California. But for this episode, we will stick to the impact of spring break can have on Utah. By the time spring break hits in Utah, everyone is ready for some sunshine after a long, cold winter months. So almost everyone heads to the south, to places like St. George or Moab. The hotels and VRBOs fill up quickly, and by the time you hear this podcast, most places will already be sold out. Don't get me wrong, St. George and Moab are great choices for spring break, but they will both be very crowded. This includes any recreation site around these two towns. Many families going on spring break head to the Mighty Five national parks in Utah. These include Arches, Bryce Canyon, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, and Zion. They all offer incredible landscapes, hiking trails, and scenic drives. There's been a lot of discussion of late in the news about the recent reduction in force that has happened with national park staff. I just want to give a little clarification on how that could possibly affect Utah during spring break. From what we're hearing, about 5% of all national park staff throughout the country have been or will be let go. Now that's 5 out of every 100 employees. And we are also hearing that 5% are largely, if not completely, employees that are currently in a probationary state, typically meaning they have just started work within the last few months and have not completed their probationary period. We also understand that these positions were full-time positions and are being replaced by part-time positions that are seasonal. Many of the national parks in the United States have seasonal times of busyness. For example, Yellowstone is way busier in the summer than in the winter. So hiring a full-time employee that is only needed during the summer months, you can see would be considered a waste of money. We are also hearing that the number of people hired will be greater than it was previously planned because they will be part-time employees. So we don't anticipate a huge impact on the national parks here in Utah. Let's take a minute and review each one and kind of go over the pros and cons of visiting them. So let's start with Arches National Park. Arches National Park is home to more than 2,000 natural sandstone arches, including the very famous Delicate Arch and Landscape Arch. Arches offer stunning rock formations. It's easy to access and relatively short trails that are great for families. However, arches can be extremely crowded with limited parking at trailheads, and midday temperatures can be warm even in the spring. Starting April 1st, reservations are required if you enter the park between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Here's a little tip from JB. Get your butt out of bed and get to the park before 7 a.m. Nobody likes to wake up early when they're on vacation. But I think what's worse is being in a situation where it is so crowded you can't take a photo without 20 other people in your viewfinder. So get up early and start your Delicate Arch hike and get there before sunrise. You will get stunning photographs of Delicate Arch with the sun rising up over the La Salles. You can see the rest of the park and be out of there before most visitors arrive. Bryce Canyon is known for its breathtaking amphitheaters filled with unique rock formations we call hoodoos. The scenic drive offers multiple viewpoints, and the rim trail is easy and family friendly. Night skies are absolutely phenomenal for stargazing. However, Bryce Canyon is at a higher elevation. It's over 8,000 feet, which means temperatures here can still be quite cold during the spring break time period, and some trails may still be icy. The main road, as far as we know, is open to Rainbow Point. Zion's National Park is a favorite among visitors for its towering canyon walls and scenic hikes like the Riverside Walk and Emerald Pools. The shuttle system makes it easy to navigate the park, and the scenery is breathtaking. The park is one of the busiest in the country, especially during spring break, because it's next to St. George, meaning long shuttle lines and packed trails. Toxic algae blooms have been reported in the rivers at Zion's National Park. Do not play in the water or drink the water, even if you filter it. It is okay to drink filtered water that you get directly from a spring. This algae is extremely dangerous, and we don't want to lose any of our listeners. There are many roads and trail closures due to rock falls and weather conditions. Check at the park entrance for more information. Capitol Reef and Canyonlands. Both of these parks offer stunning desert landscapes with fewer crowds than the three we previously mentioned. Capitol Reef is located just outside the town of Torrey, Utah, but the drop in elevation between Torrey and the entrance to the park is significant. So even though it may be cool in Torrey, Capitol Reef will probably be very nice. Before Capitol Reef was made into a national park, it was the home to many pioneers. Still within the park boundaries are some of their old structures, an old schoolhouse, and even old orchards that they planted. During the right season, you can even pick fruit from those older orchard trees and enjoy the fruit. Homemade pies is a unique feature of Capitol Reef National Park. They are made every day and available for purchase. Canyonlands is phenomenal, and we have different episodes that go into greater detail about Canyonlands. Canyonlands is a big national park. There are basically 3 different sections to it. If you're planning on visiting Canyonlands, understand the difference in those sections of the park and what is required to get the most out of visiting those sections. Now let's take a moment and talk about some alternative places to go for spring break. The Mighty Five are awesome, but there are plenty of other options. As we've said in other episodes, Utah has 8 national monuments and 45 state parks. Many of Utah's state parks, if they were located in any other state, would probably be national parks. One of those is Goblin Valley State Park. This is a fantastic option for spring break. The kids will love it. There are so many hoodoos to play and hike around. It is just a fantastic family destination. There is camping both in a campground at the state park or remote camping in and around the area. But a word of caution about Goblin Valley State Park, in the springtime particularly, is the wind. Every time that we have gone to Goblin Valley for spring break, we have been hit by windstorms that have destroyed tents, destroyed awnings, filled trailers full of sand, and flip tables and trash cans have disappeared, never to be seen again. We've even been electrocuted in the sandstorm by the friction of the sand interacting with each other. So just know, if the winds start to kick up, you're going to want to head for shelter. But Goblin Valley is truly fun, and there's a lot of other things to do around Goblin Valley besides the state park. There's Little Wild Horse Canyon, which is one of the state's best slot canyons and is perfect for kids of all ages. It's an easy hike. There's no scrambling required over boulders, and it is just gorgeous. But again, stay out of slot canyons if there is rain anywhere within 100 miles. Just don't go in them. There's also rock art panels, old mines that you can explore, and just a ton of stuff around that area. We love Goblin Valley. Snow Canyon State Park is closer to St. George, and so will be a pretty crowded state park during the spring break time period. But it is a beautiful destination. It is great for hiking and biking and offers shorter trails that are perfect for families. There's a volcano you can hike up to and look down in. There are lava tubes, there are sand dunes, there are little slot canyons, and there are little arches. It is a perfect place to go for spring break. However, because it is close to St. George and it is close to Zion's National Park, It can be busy, especially on weekends. One of our favorite places to go for spring break is the San Rafael Swell. The San Rafael Swell, if you've never been there, is a rugged, remote area filled with slot canyons, petroglyphs, and off-road adventures galore. There are far fewer crowds than any other destinations. Incredible scenery and great for hiking and exploring. Only in the San Rafael Swell can you find Utah's Little Grand Canyon. It's a great place to go for families. There are proper campgrounds that you can pay to stay in, many camping spots throughout the area, and some boondocking options as well. The downside to the San Rafael Swell is it requires a high clearance vehicle to get into many of the areas. So know where you're going before you head out. If you're dead set on heading to southern Utah for spring break and want to avoid some of the crowds, I would head to Kanab. I love Kanab. I love the area around Kanab. It's just gorgeous, and you still have access to the east end of Zion's National Park. And the east end is much less crowded than the west end. What separates the east end from the west end is the big tunnel through the mountain. Kanab is a much smaller town than places like St. George or Moab. And because of that, they have less accommodations available and less restaurants. But there are very nice accommodations in Kanab, and some of my favorite restaurants are in Kanab. Kanab offers many off-roading possibilities if you're into that. There are great hikes. There's nearby the Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park, where you can recreate all day for many days and not get bored. There are Indian ruins all throughout the area. There are dinosaur footprints. It's just a fantastic place to go for a family vacation. Speaking of dinosaur footprints, let's talk about an area most people don't even think about around spring break, and that is Vernal and the Dinosaur National Monument. I love this place, but I'm kind of into dinosaurs. If you've never been, your kids will absolutely love it. They will get to see a real dinosaur dig in process, and Vernal is all about dinosaurs. You will see dinosaurs throughout the city that they can stop and take pictures with. It is a lot of fun, and Vernal is a very, very nice town. They have everything you could ever want in Vernal. Many accommodations are available, lots of activities, and one of my favorite smaller golf courses in the state of Utah. So don't forget to consider Vernal and the Dinosaur National Monument in your possible plans for spring break. Another place that a lot of people just don't think about when it comes to spring break is Price, Utah, and 9 Mile Canyon. Now, many people don't think Price is very attractive, but I grew up in that area, and I think it is a beautiful place. And there are some really cool things to see in and around Price. The old city of Helper, which is just northwest of Price, is a historic old mining town which offers some unique shops and restaurants. You can visit some of the old mining towns in the area and maybe even see a glimpse of the haunted White Lady that has been found near some of those old mining camps. Nine Mile Canyon is a short drive from Price Wellington area. Nine Mile Canyon is known as the world's largest art gallery. This canyon stretches on for well over 30 miles and has thousands upon thousands of ancient American rock art dwellings, including pit houses, granaries, and lookouts. Many improvements have been made in Nine Mile Canyon by oil companies working in the area. They have paved the road to protect the rock art panels from the dust that used to be kicked up from the dirt road. They have also put parking areas and fencing areas around many of the most popular rock art sites and dwellings. But understand, 9 Mile is full of ancient history. Keep an eye out because there's a lot of stuff in that canyon that's not in any guidebook and not labeled in any way. Every time that we've gone to 9 Mile, and we've gone to 9 Mile a lot, every time we go, we find something new we've never seen before. So keep an eye out and train your eyes to look for camouflaged dwellings throughout that canyon. We've already talked about Torrey and Capitol Reef National Park. Torrey is a beautiful little town. It's less crowded during spring break and is, again, one of our favorite places to go. We highly recommend it. Let's talk for a minute about Bears Ears National Monument. This monument has had a lot of controversy around it, and I'm not going to get into that in this episode. But what I will say is it's certainly worth a visit. It's a longer drive if you live along the Wasatch Front, but well worth the time. You can stay in Blanding or Bluff, Utah, or even Monticello, Utah. There are many amazing things to see within the park boundaries. One of our favorite areas is Comb Ridge and Cedar Mesa. Comb Ridge is an amazing rock formation of a solid wall of rock that stretches for many, many, many miles. On the east side of Comb Ridge, there are many Indian ruins nestled up within the little canyons. Some of the sites are well marked and you can easily find them, like Butler Wash, but most of the sites are not marked and require you to do some exploring on your own. But please respect these sites if you venture out into this area. This area requires careful planning due to really rough roads and the lack of services available throughout this area. Another area that we've really enjoyed is the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. A good place to base out of is Boulder, Utah, or Escalante, Utah, or even Kanab, Utah. This is a huge monument that takes in thousands and thousands of square acres. They have found tons of dinosaur bones within this national monument. There are dinosaur footprints. There are arches. There are some of the best slot canyons in Utah within the boundaries. And don't forget the historic Hole in the Rock area that was formed by Mormon pioneers trying to get to Bluff. There are tons of activities in this area. Do your research. Listen to our old episodes about this area. We spent last spring break down in this area. It's beautiful. Tons of things to do. Get out and enjoy it. Way less crowded than the Mighty Five national parks. One more area I just want to mention as a possible destination for spring break that 99.9% of the people would never think of, and that is Meadow, Utah. Where's Meadow, Utah? It's just south of Fillmore, Utah. Where's Fillmore, Utah? Well, that's the Utah's first capital, so you can find Fillmore. Just outside of Meadow, Utah is the Meadow Hot Springs that we talked about on one of our past episodes. This is a great place to take the kids and do swimming in natural hot springs. You're not going to have any crowds at this place. There are also nearby lava tubes and a white sand mountain that has been a favorite with locals for hundreds of years. Get out and explore Utah during spring break. If you're traveling from out of state, realize that things are going to be a little bit more crowded during spring break than the weeks prior, the weeks after. If you can, you may want to adjust your trips by just a little bit to save the headaches of the crowds. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Undiscovered Utah and for the exploration of Utah's beautiful but dangerous landscapes. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode. If you are interested in more information about visiting Utah, visit the website visitutah.com. I want to thank you for joining us. Please join us next time as I share more about the Great Southwest. Good night, everybody.